I'm Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 232 of the podcast. So thanks for spending some of your time with us today to hear stories of entrepreneurs in Rochester, Minnesota, and learn how and why they are building or have built their businesses in the community. We talk with both very new entrepreneurs and people who have been running their business for several years, if not decades. So make sure you are subscribed so that you never miss any of these stories and lessons learned from entrepreneurs within the community here. So on the podcast this summer, we're taking a pause from airing brand new interviews to share some of your favorites and our favorite episodes from the past 5 years of Rochester Rising. So tune in this summer and rewind with us to listen into some of our most memorable conversations and take something away to help your business grow. We air a podcast each Wednesday. You found the podcast somehow, but you can tune in on our website at rochesterrising.org. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we have a YouTube playlist dedicated to our podcasts. And you can pretty much listen in wherever you like to listen into podcast content. So you can find us wherever you best like to tune in. Rochester Rising is part of the nonprofit Collider. Collider is a Rochester-based organization that activates, connects, and empowers entrepreneurs within Rochester, Minnesota. You can learn more about Collider and how that organization can help with your business journey on our website at collider.mn. So for the summertime rewind episode that we are sharing with you today, we're going all the way back to podcast episode 25, which aired in January 2017. In this episode, I got to sit down and talk with Dr. Bruce Levy, CEO and founder, and Romeo Catracchia, Chief Commercialization Officer of COVR Medical. COVR Medical is a Rochester-based medical device startup that was built in collaboration and through the Mayo Clinic Entrepreneurship Program. The mission at COVR Medical is to raise the standard of care for patient privacy and dignity through their medical garments to keep patients covered during medical procedures. The idea developed from Dr. Levy's experience as an orthopedic surgeon at Mayo Clinic and his frustration with the unnecessary exposure of patients in the operating room and his desire to just create a better solution. So on the show today, we reshare with you a conversation we had way at the beginning of this podcast, so probably when many of you were not even subscribed. So this is a great episode to tune back into. On the show today, we talk more about COVR, the entrepreneurial journey of the team, lessons learned, and we chat about how they were just ramping up to start commercialization of their product when we sat down and talked, and much more. So I will leave you with this conversation with Dr. Bruce Levy and Romeo Catracchia of COVR Medical. All right, so I'm talking today with the COVR Medical team in the Mayo Clinic Business Accelerator. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves if you don't mind.
Hi, I'm Bruce Levy, CEO and founder.
And I'm Romeo Catracchia, Chief Commercial Officer.
Great. So I thought the best way to start is to talk about what exactly is COVR Medical and what's your mission with this company.
Sure. Thanks, Amanda. So COVR Medical is a Rochester-based LLC medical device startup company that has been built in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic Entrepreneurial Program. And basically our mission is to raise the standard of care for patient privacy and dignity by providing medical garments to patients that cover their genital area during medical and surgical procedures, but still allow medical professionals like myself access to the groin and pelvis area to actually do the medical procedures.
So you talked a little bit touched a little bit about this, but what problem were you trying to solve with your product?
So we prefer not really to describe it as a problem because I think all healthcare providers have really tried to do their best to give patients the highest level of dignity and privacy while doing the procedures. The problem is they're still unnecessarily exposed. And so we felt there's got to be a better way to try to keep these people covered and still do the medical procedure. Not all medical procedures are done with you asleep under anesthesia.
True.
And so there are a lot of procedures done where patients are completely naked, sitting on an operator, laying on an operating table, and medical professionals are milling about and getting things ready, and then they get prepped and have the procedure. And it's just a very uncomfortable experience for most patients.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And what's also interesting is it's uncomfortable for the medical staff too.
Right.
And so I think it's a win-win situation for both the patient and the medical professionals.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what your products are right now and how they work?
Sure. So we have 2 products that are currently available. The first is what we call our bilateral unit. And so this is a garment that has a very high waistband that covers the front and back, but also can accordion very close to the midline of the body so that the medical care professionals can have access to both sides of the groin and pelvis area to prep and drape for the procedure. The other is our unilateral design, and this was the first design because as a hip arthroscopy and hip surgeon, I needed only one side of the groin to be exposed. And so this product has a very large protective area. It covers both buttock areas and goes all the way down about the mid-thigh on one leg, but then completely allows access to the other side for the medical procedure. The material is a very soft, very comfortable, non-woven fabric. It's breathable, it's moisture wicking, it's highly adjustable, and we use baby elastic and Velcro that you have like on baby diapers. It's fully radiolucent, so it doesn't get in the way of if you're doing an angiogram for them to see the stents. It's disposable, there's no latex, so it's completely latex free. It comes in 5 different sizes, and it's individually packaged and disposable.
So where did this original idea for COVR Medical develop, or how did it develop, and the thought for these products? And if you want to talk a little bit about kind of your background as well. And
Sure. So the genesis of COVR really began in the operating room. And I do a lot of hip arthroscopy procedures. And in that procedure, people are essentially spread-eagled in the operating room, completely exposed. And then we have this large padded post that sits in their groin, and then we pull traction on the leg so that we can actually do the operation. And so when the post isn't there and they're spread-eagled in the operating room, we're trying to do our best to cover them and keep them, maintain privacy and dignity. And so we're using a small blue towel. And so we put the blue towel, and then people are moving about in the operating room. All of a sudden, the blue towel's on the floor. And then I'm telling the medical staff, hey, guys, we got to cover the patient, get a blue towel. And then the blue towel's on the floor. And then I start yelling at the residents and my PA, guys, come on, we've got to do a better job. Get the blue towel on there. And the blue towel's on the floor. And so it got to a point where I came home to my wife, Heather, and I just said, we have to solve this problem. We have to figure out a way to cover these patients and keep them from being unnecessarily exposed, but still let me do the operation. And so that's really where the genesis of COVR came from.
Yeah, so you talked about this a little bit, but do you want to talk about your team? So who's on it, what the roles are, what that's kind of like?
Sure. So I think the most important part of trying to start any company like this is getting the right people in place. Now, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I have absolutely no clue how, or prior to this, I had no experience running a business or developing a product or anything of that nature. My wife, Heather, however, has 12 years in medical sales. So she was an incredible asset to bring on. She knew exactly from the patient care perspective how patients would feel. She understood the process of bringing product into a hospital. So she was our first hire. And so Heather is the president of the company, and she runs the day-to-day operations, and she's really involved in every aspect of the business. Then we needed to find somebody who had done this before, somebody with incredible experience. In fact, we found somebody, Romeo Catracchia, who you'll talk to shortly, who basically has over 35 years experience in medical startups. He was introduced to me by a colleague in one of these medical device companies I work with, And he said, you've got to meet Romeo. This is right in Romeo's wheelhouse. And so we hired Romeo. Fortunately, he was available as a consultant for a couple of months. And the working relationship blossomed, and we just basically begged him to come on board. Romeo thankfully accepted to be our CCO, and he's really taken us from zero to where we are today. And you really need somebody like Romeo who understands the whole process of bringing an idea to product launch, which is where we are, to really help guide us through. And then the rest of the team, Romeo put together. So I'm going to pass it over to him, and he could tell you about the rest of the team.
Thank you, Bruce. It's an army of consultants is what I'll describe it as. I think I'm going to start with Don Siley, who's in manufacturing. This is an individual with 40 years of experience in textile manufacturing. I mean, our product is ultimately, sewn and assembled, so somebody with a textile manufacturing background is definitely necessary. He's worked with companies like Liz Claiborne, Burlington Coats, etc. So quite an experienced individual there. I think from there I'll go into our regulatory consultant, who is Russ Davies. Russ has over 30 years of experience in a medical device regulatory field with a company called Smith Medical, which of course is a very, very large company in the Twin Cities. Exactly. I have also got to mention our marketing agency, which is Brandfire, which is led by Rob Levy, who happens to be Dr. Bruce Levy's brother. And they are a very large company that is based in Toronto. They handle accounts like Toyota Canada, so like significant in size. But I had the great pleasure of working with them on all the branding that went into COVR Medical. And ultimately, I think they brought a tremendous level of expertise, not only on the branding side, but also in the development of our marketing collateral, such as our sell sheets and our packaging and our website, etc. There are others. The list sort of goes on, but I will just put it under the team of consultants that do everything from finance to legal, intellectual property. I think I've covered that. The list goes on, but just a series of individuals. It really does take a village to build a successful startup, and I think that COVR Medical is certainly an example of that.
Yeah. No, I think it is true. You need a good team, or that's one of the really key parts. Your product can be fantastic, but you need those people who have that experience to push it forward. So, again, you talked about this a little bit. So it sounds like your product is ready to launch, but do you want to talk a little bit about what stage in business development your company is at right now, and kind of how old COVR Medical is at this point?
Well, the company was established in 2014, so it's just a couple of years old, but I would say that operationally things really got started just a little over a year ago. I'd say that we are rapidly approaching the final stage. This is a Class 1 medical device, so there's not that much of a runway necessary to get your product to commercialization. And we are at a stage right now where we're scaling up the business, building inventory, getting the commercial aspects in line, including a national distributor or distributors, and of course a nationally based sales team to assist us with our commercial activities.
So I see your trophy in the corner there, but I first learned about COVR Medical through Walleye Tank. So for people who are listening who might not know what Walleye Tank is, do you just want to describe briefly what Walleye Tank entailed, and kind of what that experience was like? And I should say COVR Medical won the professional division of Walleye Tank.
So when I think of Walleye Tank, I think most people are familiar with the show Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And so you got to think Shark Tank, but you're in Minnesota, so it's called the Walleye Tank.
Right.
And essentially we got invited, we were really honored to be invited as one of 12 startup life science companies to sort of compete, if you would, in a pitch of our company to a group of walleyes. And it was a real challenge because you only had 5 minutes. You had 2.5 minutes to put a PowerPoint together. and then 2.5 minutes for question and answers. And trying to compress everything that has happened since 2014. And by the way, my Mayo invention disclosure was put in 2012. So it's been a long process to get here. And to compress all of that from the the genesis of the company to the mission to the product development to the branding to investment. I mean, we actually exceeded our capital investment needs, which was a very exciting milestone. And then to get to where we are and show that in 2.5 minutes, I think was challenging for all of the companies.
Right.
And our team got together. We put through the PowerPoint. We practiced it numerous times. And I think we, thankfully, were able to deliver. And I think we showed the Walleyes that we were able to meet a need. We were able to develop a well-designed product. We were able to hire a very solid all-star team, find investors, focus on quality and costs, and really develop a brand. In fact, at the end of the award presentation, one of the speakers got up and he said, I'm very, very nervous. I don't usually speak in large crowds, and I'm envisioning everybody now naked. And then he said, what everybody needs is a cover.
Right.
So the cover, I think my brother's marketing team has really tapped into a unique name. Mm-hmm. The shortened version of cover, COVR, is very 2016.
Sure.
And everybody just gets it.
You were saying, Dr. Levy, this is kind of your first experience being an entrepreneur. So do you want to talk a little towards that, what the entrepreneurial process has been like for you so far? And Romeo, yourself, you have more experience in startups, but kind of what your experience has been like with COVR Medical so far in building this startup.
So I think it can best be described as organized chaos.
Right.
It's methodical, and yet it's crazy busy. I think one of the things that we're thankful for is that we invested in building a really great startup plan, and we've stuck to building that company exactly as it's described in the plan, brick by brick, one brick at a time. And I would say the journey is never exactly the way you've planned it, but it's been pretty close, and it's really prevented things from falling into absolute chaos or becoming so chaotic. Nonetheless, it definitely requires a tremendous capacity for work effort, having everybody remain on top of their responsibilities, and of course the need to keep the others informed, because as you look at it, it's a small team relative to certainly the teams that I've worked for with some of the blue chip companies that I've had the pleasure of working for. And as a result of that, the requirement of each individual in that team to play their role and responsibility and to take things to the limits of their expertise, but then to remember that they are one key player in a small team, and that there's still a need to work collaboratively and to coordinate with the others. I think that's very critical.
Well, Amanda, for me, this is all just something completely new. I always tell Romeo, it would be like me handing you a scalpel and saying, go. Romeo brings, 35 years experience in this environment. And when my wife and I started this, she had 12 years experience. I had none. I've focused my entire life on medicine and learning about how to operate on people safely. And this is a completely new arena for me. And thankfully, Mayo Medical Ventures has been incredibly helpful. They've helped guide us. The value analysis at Mayo was incredibly helpful to help guide us on where we should go and where we should start. The Mayo people have been incredible. Every division and department we've gone to introduce COVR to has been met with nothing but, where has this been? Why has no one thought of this? How can I help? And the various divisions have been very helpful in helping us develop the product, trial the product, give us good feedback so that we can move forward. And I think I've just been able to rely on my wife and Romeo in terms of guiding me on where I fit in on this process, and everybody has to know their roles and stay on task, and everybody has to stay accountable. And I think that we've established a fantastic communication between all of the different people on our team. Not to mention the fact that, thankfully, we really work well together.
It's always key.
Which is really key. And I think we all understand our own limitations, too. We understand our strengths, we understand our limitations, and then we rely on each other to fill in the gaps. So for me, it's been a completely new, very exciting experience. When I think back that I put in those initial diagrams in 2012 and then used a cover garment on one of my own patients, it was almost overwhelming. And we got a letter from that patient, a handwritten letter, about how important it was and what a different experience it was to know that Mayo and that we in Mayo have taken a different step in raising the standard of privacy and dignity for people. I mean, this handwritten letter just about blew us away.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's extremely gratifying to hear something like that.
It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
That's great. So like you were saying, Romeo, starting a startup is like organized chaos. And so in that regard, what kind of hurdles or stumbling blocks have you had to overcome or learn from during this process?
I think our major challenge over the last year has been moving from a well-designed product and a well-thought-through concept to identifying a contract manufacturer and having them build our products to our specifications and to meet our desired cost and our desired delivery schedule. And I think from a business perspective, that is referred to as transfer to manufacturing. And that has been, I wouldn't call it a stumbling block, but I would definitely call it a major challenge and perhaps a major milestone. I think we have been very successful at it, but it certainly was a lot of work. And I might go as far as to describe it as blood, sweat, and tears.
Sure. So kind of along those lines, so during this process, what kind of important lesson have you learned through this growth process, or piece of advice that you would give to other aspiring entrepreneurs who are trying to start a company?
Well, from my perspective, I think there's more to being a successful entrepreneur than just having a good idea and being able to do a lot of hard work, although that's certainly a good start. I think what you need to do is surround yourself with a competent team and people like my wife and Romeo that can really help develop the company, and people that really share your vision for success and really share in the mission. Everyone has to feel that this is super important, because when you're getting home from a long day in the operating room and there's Romeo and Heather have sent me a list of 5 things that I need to look at and review and approve, you got to dig deep.
Right.
You got to dig deep, and you got to come through. And everybody has to feel that same sort of passion for the mission and recognize how important it is. And then the thing is, again, it's about limitations. If you don't know what you're doing in a certain area, reach out and find someone that does, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if somebody has 30 or 35 years experience doing something, then reach out and get the help that you need, because trying to just learn things on the fly, I think, can be the difference between success and failure.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship for sure requires a lot of hustle. And I think if you don't have that, or like you said, willing to put in late hours, weird hours, then it's almost impossible. I think that's one of the keys for sure. So I think right now in Rochester, we're at kind of a really exciting time with entrepreneurship, whether it's science-based, medical-based, we have sports tech companies, we have all kinds of stuff going on right now. But in your opinion and what you two see, what do you see happening in the Rochester entrepreneurial scene or in the Mayo Clinic entrepreneurial scene that you find is really exciting right now?
So I would say there's a lot happening right now because of the Mayo Entrepreneurial Employment Program, with the help of Mayo Medical Ventures and the development of the Biobusiness Center and the accelerator offices. More and more physicians like myself are reaching out and pursuing their ideas, because now there's an actual mechanism to do that.
Sure.
And so I think the more physicians and other healthcare providers that see a company like ours coming to product launch, the more people are trying to jump in and say, I've got a great idea. How did you do that? Who did you talk to? Who did you meet with? So I think it's a very, very exciting time. And Mayo has just been outstanding. I mean, they've been so supportive and helping everybody. I mean, building these offices, creating the space for people, having a boardroom. It's all geared to really help develop this entrepreneurship. So I think it's a very, very exciting time.
Yeah, certainly a lot different than it was even 5 years ago, I think, here. I always like to ask everybody this question. So do you have some kind of maybe web-based resource that you use to build your business or communicate with your team, or some kind of educational resource like a book or a podcast or something that you'd like to share?
I could sum up my thoughts there in just one word, and his name is Romeo Catracchia. But with that, Romeo, I'll let you finish.
Yeah,
An encyclopedia of knowledge, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. I wish maybe I need to write a book.
You should,
yeah,
maybe.
that's a good thought. So unfortunately, that's not really the approach that we've taken. It's not like there's a build a business for dummies or
Sure.
something like that I could make reference to. But I would say that the founders here really relied on the people that were available to them. And though, Bruce, thank you very much for all the nice comments that you've made about me. But really, when you look, I've come on board, it's been about 1.5 years. So prior to that, they were relying on others within the Mayo Rochester Business Ventures program that they have here, and others, the people that you've been introduced to, and have sort of expanded this circle of individuals that had greater insights on what it is that they needed to do. So while I do find that many entrepreneurs have a do-it-yourself mentality, I would almost be tempted to say, well, that's really important because you have to be hands-on, and there is a lot of work that you're going to have to do on your own. The real benefit comes from learning from other people's experiences and sort of leveraging those that are around you that have greater knowledge and greater experience to either gather insights and or to be able to partner with them. And to use that to lead the company to success, because there are just so many potential areas where you can stumble. And stumbling is great from a learning perspective, but let's face it, you don't want to stumble with your own company because it could potentially result in a flame out, which is ultimately not the goal. The goal here is to be successful, and the more in which you can leverage those that are around you to assist, the greater the benefit to the organization and the greater the likelihood of success. I would just wanted to sort of also make mention that my coming on board really had everything to do with that vision that Bruce described. When we were initially having the conversations, and I was in a consulting practice, I was helping many startups and had many opportunities to join other startups. But it really comes down to being able to understand the CEO and what their vision is for the company and buying into that vision, personally identifying with it, and really being able to connect the dots. It wasn't so much him selling me on it as much as it was myself sort of sitting back and going, okay, I can see that. I can see how this is connected to that, and I can see how this is a great idea. Why has nobody thought about this? Why in my research am I gaining so much information from patients that feel upon leaving a hospital that they have been disrespected in some way, that they have lost their dignity in some way? And just the understanding that the time really has come today, particularly with the focus on patient satisfaction and the importance of that in the medical industry itself. that the time really has come for a product like this to be developed. And I think that ability of an entrepreneur to put together his great idea, but to be able to communicate his vision is equally important to the success of the company.
Yeah. No, I think like you said, it does address an important question because, maybe before people just thought, that experience, that exposure during surgery was just something you had to deal with. And this is saying, hey, it's not really a requirement of this experience. And you want everyone, because I've had family members who've had surgery and, they're just like, this is just how it is. And you're, doesn't have to be that way. It can be better. It can be improved. And that's what this is kind of saying.
Amanda, you clearly share our vision.
I would also say, Amanda, the experience that I have with patients is they fall on a spectrum. And some of them, it's kind of funny, we speak to healthcare workers and they don't even ask the patients to remove their clothes, and suddenly they turn around and there they are. Yeah. It's like, okay, but that's people that are on one end of the spectrum. Right. And what we're finding, and it's not based and doesn't really correlate as to whether you're male or female, it doesn't really correlate as to whether you have a great body or you don't have a great body, or you're young or old. It really comes down to what you feel about it personally. Mm-hmm. But there are more people that are sort of in the middle that tend to say, I really don't like the idea. I would really prefer to have something that protects my privacy and dignity. Mm-hmm. But you also get those that are on the other side of the spectrum, which really feel uncomfortable, which really don't like the idea of going into hospitals. They would avoid health care if they didn't absolutely find it's necessary, because of this perception that they are going to be exposed and that they're going to lose their privacy and their dignity. And so the product that we have, really our approach here is that we want to increase the standard of care throughout the healthcare system, because we do believe that there is something here that needs to be provided as a better way for all patients. And it's going to take, obviously, institutions that are early adopters to this concept. Sure. But eventually our hope and our vision is that this becomes a standard of care. It's a very interesting point in the history of the company that you're speaking to us, because we are, as I mentioned, gearing up for commercialization. And so we are anticipating tremendous success and have had that in the past year, but are now looking forward to seeing that turn into sales growth and profitability growth, return on investment for our investors. I think that that's all an important aspect of what the future holds. So from a business perspective, and particularly with myself, with my commercial experience and background, things are just starting to get exciting.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And I guess my final thoughts are, if you see that there's something that you feel important about, and you feel you can make a difference in people's lives, and you don't know what to do, and it requires a little help from someone else, seek out the help. Because it was clear to me this was something that needed to be done, and I'm just very thankful that I was able to reach out and find the right people to help bring this to fruition.
Awesome. I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, well, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed this Summertime Rewind episode and learned about a startup in our community here in Rochester, Minnesota. You can learn more about COVR Medical through the links in our show notes. So that is a wrap for us at the podcast today. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us today to learn more about entrepreneurship and small business development taking place in Rochester, Minnesota. It is a huge help to us if you like the podcast, and make sure that you are subscribed wherever you listen in. And if you know someone who needs to hear this podcast, please share it with them and help them grow their business from the lessons learned shared by these entrepreneurs. So thanks so much for tuning in today. We will be back next Wednesday with a new Summertime Rewind episode.